I'd like to call the planning board meeting of the Village of Lansing for October 11, 2021 to order at 7:03 p.m. The first item on our agenda tonight is the approval of minutes of September 28, 2021. Does anybody have any amendments they would like to make to those minutes? And if not, I would entertain a motion, please.
I move that we approve the minutes as written.
Mike?
I'll second.
Monica? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving along. We're continuing the public hearing for special permit 2021-4516. Arrowhead Ventures to develop Area B of the Lansing
Oh.
Meadows plan.
Hey, Lisa, Mike has a question, quick.
Oh, sorry, public comment period.
Yeah, there you go.
Sorry. Public comment period is next. Anybody in our audience this evening that has something they'd like to bring to the attention of the planning board that is not on the agenda?
I move that we close the public comment period.
Mike moves that we close.
I will second.
Jim, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Now continue the public hearing for special permit 2021-4516 Arrowhead Ventures to develop Area B of the Lansing Meadows Plan Development Area, which includes 18 single-family senior housing units, tax parcel 47.1-1-17.21 and 47.1-1-17.29. This project is directly adjacent to the standalone retail center BJ's Wholesale Club, Area A, and the proposed commercial section A1 of the PDA that is adjacent to the shops at Ithaca Mall and is also adjacent to the enhanced wetlands Area C of the PDA, adapted to provide a bird habitat and buffer between areas A and B of the PDA. So, where are we at? Mr. Getzman, you want to start us off?
Sure, Lisa, thank you. First of all, Tony, I saw you on TV this weekend with the energy plants. The interview you were doing. I don't know if that's
Tony.
something older. Tony, you
Yeah.
were talking about power plants and the gas. Is that an older clip or was that something that was recent?
Very recent.
Yeah, no, it was great because they started showing it. All of a sudden I recognized you and they show Cornell University in your interview talking about everything. So I thought that was great.
Thanks for noticing.
Yeah. So we've had numerous meetings with the engineers going back and forth, and the submittals that came to the planning board this evening. Two of the issues that we've been trying to finalize are the sidewalk along Oak Crest, which I think we're pretty close to a design that works for all the engineers. We've had Brent and Dondi and John and everybody else involved in this process. So we've got a number of plans that have come forward, and I think we're close. We've had a lot of work going on, and in the next day or so, I know I met with John this afternoon and said they had some additional comments. They're going to get back to me. I don't think they were that significant, but they're going to get back to me. So we've submitted a number of those plans as the sidewalk moves along and the infrastructure. And doing so is allowing us to finally work on a road out there and fine grade and everything else so we can move it along. So I think that's where we are from that point of view as far as the sites. We've also submitted an updated planting plan, which includes some of the changes we've had along the south side of the property to deal with some of the diseases that have been out there, the blue goose, the needlecast disease, and some of the other things out there. So that plan was also. So I'm not sure how we should use a direction or Lisa, I'm not sure.
Well, okay, so the sidewalk plan is still an open item. I
I think
haven't,
the design is just about done.
but still, we don't have a plan to approve yet. So obviously the sidewalk impacts the planting plan, but so when I went to look at the planting plan, one thing that was very troublesome for me is I thought, well, this is kind of hard to see. So I pulled out the large plans that I had that were submitted back in 2018. And then
Right.
but they were different than what you submitted to us yesterday or whenever it was. However, they're dated with the same date. So there would be no way of knowing that they're different. Then I thought, well, maybe, let me just finish, please.
I think,
So then I thought, well, maybe
Sorry.
I filed something wrong. So I then went to another folder that I have a lot of information on this project, as you can well imagine. And I found yet a third plan, still with the same date on it. And then the one that you did submit yesterday or whatever has the June 18, 2018 date. But I know it's different because we discussed the fact that you were going to be changing from blue spruce to white spruce and whatever else. So
right.
what's concerning me is I don't know which is the right plan. I really don't know which is the plan we approved whenever, because there's been so
Lisa,
many things. Let me finish, please. Let me finish, please. And what concerns me is I've worked with engineers in the past, and whenever you make a revision, you indicate it's either a revision, you make a note on it, you change the date, but you don't just keep the same date and then make changes to it so that people have to go back and examine every little thing to see, or else you do from to, but there is always an acknowledgement of a change. I just didn't know what to do with this. I don't know how this happens. How does this happen?
Well, so the date for CAD plans for DWG file, the date always stays on June 18th. If you look at the rev right next to that box, look next to that, it says McFarland Johnson. Up
Yeah.
above there is revision. You'll see the latest one says October 7th, 21. There's also one on September 7th, 21. That's when we had changed some other trees on there. So those are all the revisions. So the one you see is the very top revision number 6. They're all the same page. But if you can look at that on the plans we submitted to you, it says revision 6, modified October 7th, 21, change
Can you
plant
show us-
IDTP to PG and PS.
Can you show us this, Mike,
Mike,
Scott?
can you-
So I don't see this on
Can you
mine.
show that, Mike? And it's the title block.
Oh,
Next to the
above McFarland.
engineer's signature above.
Yes.
Hey, Eric,
Oh,
you're
I see
lagging.
it.
Yeah,
I see it. I see it.
You're lagging a little bit, Eric. You might want to think about turning your video off. Or maybe it's just me, but I don't think it is.
No, well,
Okay.
No, it's not just you.
no, it
Sorry.
isn't. I'm sorry, Eric. I see it. Okay, so the one that we have is the one that you gave us yesterday is the latest one that you're proposing to us.
well, yeah, it was done last week.
Well,
On
whenever.
the 7th, yeah. So in a couple, Lisa, a couple of those, I mean, the real changes were when he walked the site. And I think, it's been raised that the blue spruce has had the issue with the needle cast. And so the thought was there are other trees that work here that aren't susceptible to it. And then the further thought that he came forward was the fact that we should alternate the trees in the back with what's on the plan.
Okay, well, so
So
I
it's,
have,
it's the same, it's really, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
It's very close to the plan that was approved before, except with the knowledge that the trees on the south side have been modified and changed out. And the other issue too is you have, like anything else out there, it's hard to find some trees right now.
Well, I'm not sure that we're at the stage of planting anything quite yet anyway. Okay, so I went over to the fire station and I went to BJ's and I went to the Y and I looked at what people would see when they look at the site. And I really think, Eric, these are supposed to be fair market price rentals, correct?
Yeah,
Unless you put up, I don't see how there's room for trees between, on the west side. Not the ones that are proposed. They can grow pretty large. Norway spruce. And there's just no privacy for these people unless you put up a fence. I mean,
where's that, Lisa? I'm sorry.
I'm talking about on the west side, but between the fire station and those buildings. And actually looking from the Y, there's just, you've got what, 20 feet, 25 feet setback, something like that. But I mean, the point of it is these people are not going to have any privacy whatsoever. And I think that those sliders, I don't know, I haven't seen the floor plan, but I think those sliders are the primary source of light for the apartments, aren't they?
Oh, no, so we have, so you talk, so you're talking up by the Y, correct?
Well, I'm
Start
talking about
there.
two places. I'm talking about by the Y is one place, yes. Where the fence ends, that stops at the BJ's property, the rest of those buildings are totally exposed.
Well,
And
where the fence ends, the trees that we plant, plus there's a number of shrubs there. It's a much wider area than as you go down towards the west side, going towards the fire station. So there is a lot of coverage up above there between the Y. And they'll be planted more towards the southern property line, which is towards the Y. So I think you'll have, plenty of coverage there. And plus the homes are much lower, down in the ground than up above. So the trees will be planted in a higher area. And the Y has their, their field up along there too.
well, what about along I think the privacy for your tenants is going to be really not pleasant for them. But aside from that, what's going on, it just seems on the west that I don't know. I don't know what the infrastructure is like there either, but I mean, I was hoping that John Courtney would be able to advise us as to whether there's anything that we have to be mindful of.
Well, I did talk with John this afternoon about that, and I need to work further with him on the location of those trees because we do have sanitary back there. So we were going to walk back and take a look at it. We didn't get time during our meeting today, which I'll be on site with him again tomorrow.
Well, again, I think you might consider, I mean, the problem is at the fire station, a lot of times the postman, delivery people, they pull in there to regroup or whatever they do and talk on the cell phone. And there's not going to be any privacy with just trees. The trees are going to take some time, first of all. Second of all, these guys are not going to be covered down low, which is where people sit and live. So I don't know. I think you need to take another look at that west end, especially personally.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Hi, I'm John Lange. I'm the attorney for the applicant, and I don't mean to interrupt. I'm taking my notes here. I'm just trying to understand what the chair is directing the applicant to do, if anything. My understanding is that this was a previously approved plan and the applicant was constructing it. I know there's been some bumps along the way, but did the previously approved plan have a fence in that area?
No, it did not.
But is it now, it's now the chair's position that a fence has to be installed in that area?
I think it should be, I didn't say it has to be, but I think he should consider it because I think it
Okay,
might be
all right.
more beneficial.
If
I
that's a
think-
fair point. Yeah, a fair point about considering. I just want to make sure that I understand, because the applicant needs to understand what it's being required to do. And if a fence hadn't been required before, but they are offering these substantial plantings, I would probably defer to the landscape architects, the engineers, as to the advisability of the plantings and fences and so on. But we do feel that the prior approved plan, because it was approved and was being constructed, was probably sufficient at that time. That was the only thing I wanted to say.
At that time, perhaps it was. I think we'll reserve
Correct.
Until we see the sidewalk plan. We really can't know what to do up there. And that again is somewhat different than what we had in the past.
I would certainly need to know what the changed circumstances would be in order to impose additional conditions upon an applicant that had a previously fully approved plan, of course.
Fine.
We do have to also take and consider this. This is a brand new special permit also, Mr. Lange. So yes, the planning board can take in consideration what it has been approved before. I mean, obviously, it's easier if the applicant doesn't have to change a whole lot, but as you know, over time, and this has been a good 3 years, you know, you get to look at a project and find out some things that you might want to change, or excuse me, some things you might want to change, or some things that might be helpful.
Yes, Mr. Scott, I appreciate your comments. And all I would suggest is that if there are changes to the plan, there needs to be a legitimate basis and reason for the requested changes, and that's simply not just simply a matter of it's been 3 years. I do appreciate it's taken a long time to complete this project. And as Mr. Scott's aware, we have a pending application for the zoning board relative to our position that the applicant can complete the project that had been approved. And I don't want to sidetrack this meeting. I want to let the planning board get through its work, and I'll take my notes from here.
Well, and I think just to add in, you know, from my point on the planning board, I'm not sure anyone other than Lisa was here when the original special permit was granted. And I know that that's in a different state right now, but 10 years is a long time, more than 10 years. I don't know when this whole project started, but I think that every person other than Lisa is new on the board. And I think we all have very different views of that area of the village and how the village has been modified over the years. So I think it's perfectly acceptable for any of us here to say we want something maybe the same, maybe very different from what was previously approved by a vast majority of another planning board.
I appreciate it. I can't tell who's speaking in this. I can't tell who
Sorry,
that was.
it's Mike Baker. I've got my video off because I'm having internet issues like Eric too, I think, and I don't want it to start stuttering.
Thank you, Mr. Baker.
Sorry, yeah.
I appreciate your comment. And again, I would say that when the members of a planning board change, if we all stop and think about it, it shouldn't matter that different individuals sit in chairs. The outcomes should be the same. Not as to someone's particular likes or dislikes. That would be more arbitrary than it would be sort of level and fair. So again, I just don't want to get the applicant into a position where additional conditions that don't really have any basis to what the original approvals were. I don't want to keep adding these burdensome things to this applicant. However, I want to step out of the way and let you complete your work here.
Sure.
One thing I would say though is this is a rather, different than a normal, it's not just a straight district. This is a PDA. And the applicant has made numerous requests over the years and changes. And I feel as though we're in that same position. If this is part of the PDA process, it's kind of a negotiation, and we come to an agreement about what is beneficial. And sometimes those things don't always correlate when it comes to what our needs are and what our wants are. But I think it is somewhat different. And so I'm not sure, I don't feel as strongly about that, but I don't disagree that you can't be changing previous things if they were capriciously. But on the other hand, this is a bit different than just the normal thing. We're in a different situation here. I think that, it's a new special permit because certain conditions weren't met. And so I think it gives us a new opportunity. I don't think that some of the suggestions that the planning board makes, or that the DPW makes, or that our engineer makes, are ever meant to be anything but helpful. I really do feel that if you're going to want to rent these things, you're going to want to provide your tenants with some privacy. This is their home. And I would suggest you take a really hard look at that and be sure that it's a desirable place to live as much as possible, given some of the conditions we now have on our hands. I do have another question though for Eric. And so the sidewalk plan is underway, coming, you believe, to some sort of closure. We have the planting plan that I wouldn't want to make any decisions on, especially until we know what the sidewalk is about and what's going on with at the west end. But I too hope you would be open to taking a real hard look at, if you lived there, what would you want? And what else is open in terms of infrastructure?
Hey, Lisa, on the, I want to bring up on the actual sidewalk, there's a discussion that the planning board needs to have for the sidewalk when it gets extended towards Hickory Hollow. I don't know if there was anything that was ever finalized with that. I'll see if I can bring up what I have here.
Oh, I didn't see that on the plan, the landscape plan. I don't know if it was supposed to be on there or not.
Well, here, I'll bring, share the screen here, and it's just something you might have to discuss. And I know Eric and Jim Bolt had some ideas, and of course, you guys have some ideas. On this, here's Oakcrest Road here. You have your sidewalk come over, and then it comes down through this area. Can everybody see what I'm doing here?
Yeah.
Okay, so it comes down through this area where this is the commercial section. But then as per our new sidewalk code, all the frontage is required to have sidewalk unless planning board deems otherwise. So technically, by code, a sidewalk would need to go in this area. Now, this is kind of an odd circumstance here. There's a couple issues here. One, this pavement area is really extended back into here as a turnaround for DPW. And two, if this, as a former builder, if this sidewalk were to go in here, if this section was ever to be developed, that would probably end up getting destroyed and have to be redone. So, I mean, that's something that I'm kind of taking the first step here for Eric, for you to discuss with the planning board what they want to do with this situation. Do you want to wait until this commercial parcel is developed, or what would you like to do with this? So it's a discussion you really need to have at some point. Did I explain myself okay with that?
You did for me. Now, originally, it was going to come up from the corner of this last building in some way. I don't think we've seen this proposal where it comes. So this is the property line between A1 and Chow's, is that correct?
Yes, this is Chow's right here.
See, and before it was on the south west side of A1, between the site and A1. So I think this is there. It came up there somehow. I don't remember. It was never finalized, I guess. I thought it was on the site plan, but I don't know.
Well, it would be almost impossible to have it ADA compliant coming this way. So it got moved over to separate between Chow's and the other commercial lot. This way, this all can be ADA compliant.
Okay. So what's going on with A1? Why it's never indicated on any of the plans that it's that it's A1. What's going on with A1?
Eric, did you drop
Eric
out?
dropped off. Yeah, it looks
I
like
would
Eric
say-
dropped off.
Did we lose him? Brent, go ahead.
Just to pick up a little bit of what Mike was talking about, that's one of the topics that's been going on during the engineers meetings. And the other was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, that there was at least some degree of uncertainty about how if the planning board needed to acknowledge or condition the fact that that piece of sidewalk that Mike was just pointing out that runs over from Oak Crest over to Hickory Hollow is going to be across the A1 lot. And since the new sidewalk law talks about keeping the sidewalk within public right-of-ways, do we consider that a sidewalk, or is it some kind of walkway on private property? Or is it a sidewalk that's going to get dedicated to the village? And if so, you know, is there an expectation, not is there an expectation, but there would be a need for a conveyance of right-of-way or easement there.
Yeah, I believe at this point, Brian, it was discussed as this was going to be an easement here. In
Okay, but
which then the sidewalk could be maintained by the village.
okay.
And
Yeah.
is that what the village wants, is what you're asking?
Well, yeah, just
Pardon me?
kind of pointing out the kind of the nuance that I think when the overall original plan was contemplated, that might have fallen into more of the category of a trail,
Yes.
either on private property or as dedicated an easement. And I just didn't know if, you know, in today's world with new local law on the sidewalks, if that changed anything, or just to make sure everybody was thinking about, is this a sidewalk per se, or is it still some kind of a, you know, walkway or trail, which there's the importance of that is twofold. One is, what is the legal classification of it? And then the other is, how is it built and maintained? You know, we have trails that are built in a different way than we have sidewalks that are built.
You know, I remember too, this is why, this is the first time that I think, well, I've seen it. And as I said, the ones that I remember and that we discussed originally many years ago it was more of a trail coming up from the loop road past the first building and then going out. And as Mike says, that isn't feasible to do, but I think at that point it was considered more of a trail. And, you know, some of this, is that what you remember?
Yeah, as I remember the debate of whether or not that when it did connect to the loop road, whether or
Right.
not keeping people, if that was an adequate amount of, you know, just to dump the people into that, you know, road. And I think that along the way, it became the planning board's desire to see it upgraded a little bit so that there wasn't pedestrians being joined into the same walkway, or that the walkway wouldn't be conjoined with the driveway on the loop road. So
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I remember too, is we said, well, if people come up Oak Crest, then they're going to start cutting through this property, which is going to interfere with the residents. And how does that all work? But
Yeah.
it was never totally decided, I don't think. I guess, obviously it wasn't.
I think it's been a while though, since at least, you know, over the last few years, I think that the location where it's shown right now has been consistent. Maybe at least in the time period that I've known of it as showing up, you know, even like on the plan that you have today, which is a planting plan. I think that it, you know, it's consistent with what you had asked for. So I think that I would agree. I'll offer my comment that I would agree that Mike's observations about what is the best thing to do once that sidewalk intersects with Hickory Hollow is there's kind of some unusual existing features there. And it seems as though that if that's going to be the primary entrance for the future commercial, it probably is best to kind of either, well, I'm not sure what's best, but I'm just saying that it's definitely something you're going to want to think about. And if, you know, allowing for some accommodation for future driveway crossing, if that means that it's not in the best interest to build a hard sidewalk there right now, maybe some kind of line striping through that paved area might be good enough. So
I mean, is it even to the point of needing to delay construction, would you say? Oh, Tony, go ahead.
No, not at all. No.
Okay,
I'm trying to make sure that I understand what all this discussion is about, because we've already been told that the sidewalk plan is still under development. I
Right.
assume that the sidewalk plan that is still under development includes the sections of the sidewalk that we're talking about at the northeast corner and down the eastern edge. So if the sidewalk plan that is still under discussion does indeed include the sections we're talking about, including the section between Chow, whereas now we're not going to have a right of way, from my understanding is correct from this discussion. And so the only remaining question is the one that Mike asked 10 minutes ago, which is, do we at this point include in the not yet finished sidewalk plan or not yet approved sidewalk plan, the short section from the intersection of the eastern sidewalk with Hickory Hollow to the west to conform to our sidewalk idea of completely encapsulating right away. I'm sorry, a lot, wrong phrase, encapsulating the edge of a property. I'm not sure I'm helping the conversation here, but I just want to know for clarification, what do you want us to say here? Do you want us to say, let's table this until we see the completed sidewalk plan? Or do you want us to say, let's make sure that the completed sidewalk plan, as Mike and Brent just suggested, leaves off that additional section where the proposed sidewalk intersects Hickory Hollow?
Can you hear me?
Did that help?
we can hear you now.
Yeah, Eric, what I had,
Am I froze out again?
No, you're there. Just don't put your video on for now.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for putting that picture up. It really helps the discussion.
so as we just pointed out, the sidewalk comes down through here.
Mike, can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Yes, we can hear you.
but by code, you would have to follow this section.
Right.
Okay, and this is kind of, like I said, this is kind of an odd turnaround. So yes, it would probably end up getting destroyed when this commercial section gets built. The other possibility would be to, well, let me back up real quick. Inevitably, we'd like it to meet up with this sidewalk down here.
Right.
So whether you have them build this later on, after this has been actually subdivided, which if he develops this commercial area, he'd again be required to produce a sidewalk, or you have him produce it now, in which it could probably be torn up later, which is not what I'm advising. If you have some type of striping coming across here, possibly, some of that is a liability thing that Bill Troy would be more, it'd be more appropriate for him to pipe in on, but this is a decision that the planning board needs to make. Do you require him to put this in which it could possibly be destroyed later on, or do we leave it off and pick it up when we do the commercial area? That's a question that you'll have to decide. Now, whether
The issue really in terms of usability is that people are going to rent in this development. And one of the key ideas of the rentals for this development is that they can walk to the Y, they can walk to the mall, they can walk to Chow. And if we complete the sidewalk up until where the pointer currently is pointing, they can't get to any of those places by sidewalk. But point to the intersection with the sidewalk in Hickory Hollow, please, Mike.
With Chow's over, keep going east. Oh, no.
No, point
No,
to where the eastern edge of the proposed sidewalk meets Hickory Hollow.
over here,
Yes.
Right there.
Right. So if at this point, if we as a planning board say, let's make sure that the not yet approved sidewalk plan ends there, then people who rent can't get by sidewalk to where they want to go.
It's not going to change if you have them put it in according to the law. You can only require them to bring it to his frontage, and it still doesn't get people anywhere. Yeah, Mike, if you could,
you're gonna get it over here.
yeah, right where his pointer is now, still doesn't complete the loop.
No. So isn't this why you have escrow accounts partly?
Could be, yes.
But I guess, again, so what are the intentions for A1? Because if it's going to be 10 years, then, I think, is it unsafe to put it in up to that first point by Chow's driveway and then let people walk on the street? I suppose it is. Are we liable for that? If that's the case?
You're going to be liable for the portion of the right of way along the frontage of the YMCA parking lot. From there, yeah, along there. That's not even adjacent to the developer's project.
So
And
I'm
also-
sorry, I don't want to hog the conversation, but isn't there a budget, Village of Lansing budget for sidewalk development in areas where there should have been sidewalk, but there wasn't sidewalk? Like, for example, along the Y property?
Yeah, it's possible, Tony. I know what you're saying, that, you could put that in as a near future area to connect to the commercial site all the way over to the existing one. You'd have a complete loop. That's what you're talking about?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's possible.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I've missed this entire conversation. I've gone from my computer to my iPad to my cell phone now. And I think you're talking about the sidewalk, but I lost since you started. The sidewalk plan we submitted to you is one that's, that's where we're going to build the sidewalk. The issue I said wasn't complete. It's the underneath portion. It's the 18-inch pipe. It's where it's going to be located. And we have sections that we've given to Dondi and John that we're trying to get through right now. So it's not the location, it's the structure on actually building it, because it's fairly complex underneath there with the inverts and the inlets and everything else. So that is the sidewalk, as we've all agreed, where it's going to be located. And then we bring it up along the property down to Hickory Hollow. So it's drawn on there. And again, when we went to I went to the Board of Trustees recently to ask if we could go outside of the right of way, only because with the engineers were thinking that might be better on the other side, and they came back and said, well, we'll keep it in there. So I was trying to get permission to have a discussion to do that, but it's got to be maintained in the right of way. And I think the one section we talked about too in the commercial piece is that, we're going to be back in front of you, and at that point we'd like to deal with the sidewalk, and that's something, as soon as the housing gets done, we'd like to come back to you for to move forward on that development. So that's going to be coming back at you, at which point we'd rather not rip out a sidewalk that's going to be ripped out and put a whole new one in.
Monica?
So my concern is that that parcel, that A1 parcel, remains vacant for an extended period of time, and then there is no sidewalk there, and then there is no loop, right? Because the village can come in at any point and close that loop off, since we do have budgets for sidewalks every single year. We can make that a priority because it's not a very large section of sidewalk. So my concern is that if we just say we're worried about it when we do A1 and A1 never comes to fruition, we sort of have this weird half-finished sidewalk. So can we put like a time constraint on it? Say, you build the sidewalk without that little loop there. And then if nothing happens in, say, 3 years, then we have money in escrow to put that sidewalk in. Is that a possibility?
And I think if you can hear me, that where we're talking about, it's the old turnaround for plows. That's old right of way turnaround for plows. It was a one-way street originally, so it's all paved in the right of way right now. The entire area is paved. It's a massive amount, and that's all in the right of way, I believe. That's why we talked about, as we look at the entrance into that and design that. And I think just the discussion here was not to talk about the commercial piece, because we don't want to give any signs of approvals towards that, which we totally understand. But when we come back, that's going to have its own design to the entry with the sidewalk across it and everything else. It's just not designed.
Well, as I said, and that's what I'm saying, that's what escrow accounts are for, I think, because it is so unsettled. But it's something we all have to be thinking about, and I guess we don't have enough information. I would like to hear more about, I guess, from DPW and maybe Brent too, with the whole closing off of this loop. How, and maybe the trustees, is what are the plans for sidewalks in our village? I don't know whether this is a possibility, but I think we need to explore that.
I think it is an area that's highly unusual with the configuration of how the curve is actually tighter than a 90-degree curve, and that the extra portion of the land that's in the village's own ownership is all paved. And so that wouldn't be kind of a traditional way that it would be laid out. So I think it's I think what Mike was asking of you tonight, and I think that this conversation is good in that it's bringing everybody's focus to it. But I think that it is going to require some kind of extra thinking and input from people like you mentioned, John, and everybody. So I don't think there's any way we're going to solve it tonight, but I think Monica's question or idea is maybe something that if we have Eric get something on paper as like a placeholder, and there's a dollar value associated with that you could then pull that aside as a separate condition, such that it has its own identifiable cost element that you could, ask for an escrow for just that portion of it, or until which time it becomes clear what it is that's going to happen on the commercial lot.
Well, it occurs to me too that at some point, how they always say you figure out where to put a sidewalk by where people beat a path. When I'm thinking about people are going to they're going to cut through, they are. And so, well, I don't know, but so it would be better to anticipate some of that, I guess. But yeah, I think it's a little, but we do have to be thinking about all these options. Bill, you had a comment?
Yeah, briefly, Tony brought up a very good point about expectations that we're going to have a walking area for the people in this development. And we have to allow for the possibility that A1 may not be developed for another 5 or 10 years. And how would the village feel about that? Where would we want to just jump in right away and just put the sidewalk in and just get it done? But that's a decision for the Board of Trustees, it seems to me, because that's the expenditure of funds. The second thing, if I can digress this slightly, and this is for John and Eric, I have the McFarland Johnson landscape plans. I have one that has no revisions listed, and it's dated June 18, 2018, it looks like. And then I have one that has revisions 1 through 4, with the 4th revision being dated 6/18/19. Are there any other plans or maps like this with further revisions?
I think we
No,
saw
Eric, answer that.
I think we saw the one tonight that has a 6th revision.
Well, could I ask that as a prelude to follow up with a request? Can someone send me a copy of that, just so I have it all in one place? And I want to make sure that's it. It goes up to the 6th revision, and that's all we are dealing with here.
So either Eric or Mike Scott can send you the last version, Bill, so that you have it.
All right.
I would like to comment that maybe a little bit of the confusion that Lisa had, and I can see how this could be the case, that although that you have the plan that Mike Scott showed tonight that has the date on it with a 6th revision, revisions are usually identified with a triangle bubble on the plan, and you can kind of see where it went from 1, what was different between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So I would request that Eric have Adam's guys from McFarland add some number notations that would indicate what is it that's the sixth revision as compared to what was the, if you're just looking at a plan, you don't know what the revisions were. So
I think it says on it, Brent, what the revisions are. Like, I don't have it. I can't see it because I left my computer, but it'll say revision 6 went from PP to the P&G and the PS plants. It shows them. So there's the only changes were along the south side. Those are the only changes from the approved plan, were the trees along the south side.
And you
which we
just
discussed
clarified
last time.
that without your verbal clarification, how would somebody know that?
See,
But
You have to have,
I'm sorry, Brian, go ahead. I'm sorry.
you got to have the revision bubbles on the plan itself so that you know what it is that where revision 6 was within the plan.
Just to show you, Eric, this is what made it kind of complicated. I'm going to share the screen here. On the one,
Whoops.
what's what? Okay, here is here is one of the landscape plans that has a revision down here that's 5/30/19. Believe so, 5/30/19, and this has trees out by Oakcrest. Okay. If you go to what I have here, this is the next one. This is number 4. It's 6/18/19. Now the trees aren't there. But with the plan that you sent, these trees aren't there now. So unless you have the markings that Brent has discussed, it's very hard to see how this thing progressed or how it developed. Do you know what I'm saying?
But we can highlight it. I'm just saying that I would look at the approved plan that's approved, because we went through this back when we approved it, because we've gone through a number of different planting plans. And that was the one that was approved. Since the approved plan, really what you're seeing here is this. And the only things that have changed are those trees on the south side because of the type we had since that time. I think we all realized that the blue spruce was something that we wanted to change out. And we also had an issue with the wet ones west of that, so we changed those out. So that was a change, but we can highlight them a different way. The engineer, I mean, everybody does it a different way, but in his revision, from the 9/7/21, the only thing we changed is we alternated the blue spruce out because that came from the last meeting. So, but we can mark it another way. We can highlight them, but it's just all the trees on the south side. And again, the last meeting we had on the 7th or around there of September was dealing when the landscape architect went down and walked the building to see how wet it was and changed the buildings on the west out. And then the next meeting, at that meeting, we decided the blue spruce needed to be changed out. So that was changed. In the last meeting, the planning board asked that I mark it. So we had a new plan come up and these were marked here. That's the only changes. So if you look at what was approved, we have that plan and we have this plan, and you'll see those are the only 2 changes on there.
Okay, does anybody else have any other comments?
I was just gonna, for Tony's, kind of following up on one of Tony's questions was, what was close to completion on the sidewalk plan? Talking with John Courtney and Dondi and myself and Mike, the concentration of that effort has been on the stormwater conveyance within the public right of way. And I think that Eric's representation is that it's almost done is more related to that comment, that there's been a lot of focus been put on what the expectation is for the stormwater improvements. And I would concur that I think that there's been a lot of discussion back and forth between Eric and John, and to the best of my understanding is they are zeroing in on that. The other things that were on the table during the course of these, I'll call it engineers discussions, is the 3 other topics, which are basically utility in nature. water mains, sewer mains, and stormwater management plans. And I think in general, I can categorize that they're also all moving forward. One of the details that was of debate or contention was what to do with the laterals that were installed for the future, what were called future extensions. And there's been a lot of discussion and negotiation on that. And again, I think that without representing either side's, view on that, I think that we are zeroing in on coming to an agreement on that.
So when you come to agreement, then we will have some final plans submitted to the planning board. Is that what we're?
Plans plus our comments from John and myself that can
Okay.
confirm, the decision making or the specifications that we've agreed to.
Okay, your recommendations to the board.
Yeah,
Mike?
right.
Lisa, I just share this what Brent was saying, just to let you know that this is what Eric's representative sent over to John Courtney. This is what they're working on, which is exactly what the village has requested. This has been great. Him sending this over. This shows that you have your sidewalk, you have Oak Crest. You'll have a slight swale here to handle a lot of the road water that'll roll down through that. But then you also have a pipe underneath that'll handle all of the one will handle the water from the road underlayment, and will also handle the water coming from up towards Chow's that direction. So this is what they're looking for. This is good. This is real good. So just wanted to let you know.
Okay, good. So we're making progress. Okay, are there any other questions or comments? If not, Eric, any questions or comments from you?
I'm sorry, I missed a significant portion because I was cut out. So I'll circle back with John to see what I missed here, but I guess we're trying to move this along to meet the requirements you're looking for. And we'd like to push it along if we can towards the next meeting, that's all.
Eric, was there something done today? Did you guys work on those sewer laterals today?
Yeah, John was down on site today with that.
Okay.
Hey, Mike Scott, do you know when the videotape of this is available for review? So I'll speak to Eric, but I think it'd be good for him to watch or listen to this. I know a lot of my clients had the video posted within a day or two.
Yeah, well, what I can do is we're going to end up posting on YouTube as soon as I get
Perfect.
probably a couple
Great.
days. So I'll set you up with whatever you need to take a look at, so I know you wanted the first meeting also, and I believe I posted that too. So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I think we've exhausted this topic for this evening. And we will expect you back then at the end of the month on October the 26th.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay.
thank you.
The next item on our agenda was informal review of the roadway exit and entry at East Point Apartments. We got notice from Marissa Benzio that they would like to delay that also until October the 26th. So they will be coming back to us. I don't know. Everybody should just take if you haven't driven by, just take a drive by at some point in the next couple of weeks, just to sort of, get a view of it and see what you think. That purpose being to open up that emergency exit. And I think Mike has sort of said too, that we never made a condition that said they couldn't do so, but I would think that there might be some engineering considerations and stuff that it would be good to probably just have a conversation with them and see what their intentions are. And there are a couple of things like for safety that we'll probably need to be discussing and thinking about. So Other than that, other business is the review of our proposed lighting law. Mike, Scott, you want to
Yep. And
pick us up?
and speaking with the lighting commission, last meeting, Monica had a suggestion that we put into the proposed local law, something to do with dimmable, if you're going to change the lighting, the actual fixture, that it become a dimmable lighting fixture, or if anything is being, obviously new ones are going to be required to have the dimmable fixture, but as I put it here in red, we basically have a starting date that I put in there as the adoption date, and the lighting commission, they agreed that this looked good to them. I kind of want to, I'd like to see, if I realize this is an important proposed local law, but we really do have to remember that we can't cover everything there is. I mean, a lot of this is going to be left into the hands of our trustee lighting commission to make sure things get right. It would be nice if, if there's anything that you do want to change this evening, having Tony here, that we could possibly get it done here and hopefully get this moved on to the Board of Trustees. Like I said, by no means am I pushing you. Well, actually, it sounds like I am, but by no means my intention to, put it past you or anything like that. So that's just my comment. That's all.
Bill. Unmute.
Can I ask for a change in that red wording?
Okay.
Instead of as of the adoption date, how about commencing on the adoption date of this law, any new? So take as of out and say commencing on. It's a lawyer thing. What did I tell you?
I was wondering if possible, just so that that doesn't get overlooked. Well, the lighting commission will be certain about that. But when under the lighting site plan, we have A through H, whether we should add an I that says all fixtures should be, or fixtures should be dimmable, just to highlight it and be sure they have a little checklist sort of thing. I don't know, just a suggestion.
I think Lisa has a good suggestion.
I'm with me.
Lisa,
Drop
Yeah.
it in there, Mike.
What's that? What's that, Tony?
Yes,
You agree?
Tony's taking the weight of the lighting commission on his shoulders right now.
it'll be my responsibility if they come back and bark.
They wouldn't dare, would they?
Oh, yeah.
I just thought it would be, just to be sure, because I just know how I read some of these things sometimes, and when there's a list, I can kind of tick them off, but sometimes I don't read as carefully, so.
No, it's true, because the red language addresses changes or modifications, but it's important to put this standard in as an initial standard that must be met. So it was a good idea.
Brent,
Thank you. Every now and again.
Lisa, you might not be able to see Brent, but he's got his hand up.
Oh, I can't see Brent. I'm sorry, Brent.
okay. Sorry, it's a new thought and it may not be important, but when there's discussion of lighting, is this local law intended to be partial guidance for the planning board for subdivisions, or is this mostly just for individual projects? And the reason I'm asking is, would we ever be talking about street lighting? Not just regular
Under
lighting.
applicability.
under applicability.
Take a look at item B.
So does it exclude street lighting?
No. It does
The reason
not.
I bring that, the reason I bring,
It says high density residential.
But it
So-
has commercial. It says within,
let me ask a question is, when there is a subdivision plan that comes before the planning board, would this tool, would this street lighting apply to the street lights that are provided in the public right of way?
I think that's the intention, Brent.
Okay, so I think maybe also, that's kind of what I was thinking, that you want it to be able to contemplate all possible future lighting. And one thing that I'm not exactly familiar with what John is doing with street lighting, but I'm at least think it might be worth contemplating what needs to be put in here for the fact that street lighting within the public right of way is subject to the cost of the energy is paid for by the village through the Public Service Commission's definition of tariffs, street lighting tariffs, which means you can buy energy, or you have to buy the energy for street lighting through an unmetered mechanism, which means that, and having direct familiarity with this from the Village of Cuyahoga Heights, that so I'm bringing this point up is that the question about whether or not the street light or the light would have dimmability is kind of built into the fact that the modern day street light has not only a dimmable feature, but it also has a disconnect, which allows for the municipality to have that light and own that light without having to pay for the NYSEG tariff, which would be direct wired. And I'm sure John has, this is something John can give you advice on. And I just think that it's something we're gonna want to ask for John's input on. I'm kind of muddying it up by bringing the topic up, but I think the real answer is this is a technicality that I think you're going to need John's feedback on.
but could I ask a question about that? Just thinking about how things have changed. So is there some way that we could kind of do this blanket thing about municipal or utility standards or something where we don't get too specific about this? Because we do address exterior lighting will be directed to avoid interference with the safe operation of motor vehicles, which to me sort of means could be streetlights, but is there some way,
I'm not sure about that, but I'm just imagining that when it comes time to require a developer to buy lights that he'll be installing in the future subdivision, who knows what the technology will be on that date, but I just know that the current technology is that the street lights that most municipalities are using and buying have these features built into them, and whether or not you can just cover that with some kind of a generic comment that that the street lighting to be installed within a public right of way would meet modern standards, or if you need to be specific about these features such as dimmable and having a disconnect. I'm not sure what to say about that, but these are features that are kind of important for management of street lighting in the future. So again, I think that probably John has a pretty good handle on what he's looking for, and you may be able to cover it with a generic comment, or he might want you to add some specific details.
so maybe, do you, Bill?
I suppose once a prosecutor, always a prosecutor, but what should C1 talk about consideration given to the needs for public safety?
C1, all exterior C1,
C1 and then go down to J, that some consideration be given to public safety. So for example, you're gonna have this lighting law control high density residential, which means apartments. To me, there are a lot of dark spots between the parking lot and the entry to an apartment.
so you're saying add J to make,
Yes. And consideration should be given to the needs for public safety or something like that.
While Mike's typing that, I think maybe everybody is aware of it, and I know Tony is probably very familiar with it. But the interesting thing about what we're talking about is that dimmable is that as an example of in street lighting, I don't know if John has the technology yet, but the idea of dimmable lighting is that there's a computer program, and you can actually from his desk, modify the output of these lights, and they all have like their own little Wi-Fi connection or whatever the right technology is. And also I wanted to comment, I know this is probably getting very deep in the weeds, but I've had some firsthand experience that dimming of 3000 Kelvin lights, which I understand Kelvin is different than the output, but my recent experiences within the last few months is that when we've dimmed them and you're talking about a percentage, it's important to understand that 50% is talking about, you want to make sure you're talking about are you talking about the percentage of output, or are you talking about the percentage of the reduction of output? And so I think that the number that you were talking about is the actual percentage of output, so that a 30% reduction to a 70% output is, so far I've found that 70% output is barely discernible by the eye, and that most everybody in the neighborhood where we've dimmed them from 100% to 70% have called back and asked for it to be dimmed further. And 50% is usually about where people go, oh yeah, that was better. That's where their comfort level is.
okay, I'm starting to lose, not being very technical. So,
Well,
I apologize.
Lisa, I think what he's saying is, and I agree, if you look under item D3, so no more than 50% of total
Right.
site lighting can remain on overnight. Okay, so I think what is being recommended by Brent is 50% of total maximum output capability.
I think so too.
But wait, well, I don't think that was the true intention of what that 50% was it, Tony? I thought the 50%, when talking to John, was 50%. If you had 10 of them, you had to have at least 5 of them turned off.
no, I thought we wanted overall, we wanted all 10 to be reduced to 50, no?
No,
That's-
because we did that because every light that's existing now is not necessarily dimmable.
Not necessarily dimmable.
Right, but
Oh.
I think what I'm trying to point out is that for existing lighting, you don't have this dimming capability. So as you've written it is the right way to address that. But for the future lights that will have dimmability,
Yep.
you might want to have wording that clarifies what Tony was just saying, is that we want that instead of, if you have a dimmable capability, you want to
Right.
utilize that dimmable
Yeah.
capability and not just shut every other one off.
So are you saying that maybe we keep for non-dimmable lighting, no more than 50% can remain on? For dimmable, it must be reduced, all lighting must be reduced 50%. So, I mean, do we
Yes.
need to add those two differences? Okay, now I get it.
Honestly, I honestly think that's gonna be a nightmare, having two different rules for, depending on what type of lights they have. It's gonna be an absolute nightmare to enforce.
Okay, so do you think that the lighting commission can handle that on an as-needed basis till everything's upgraded? I don't think we should leave it to that, though. I mean, I keep thinking of McGuire, and we got into this tussle about, well, we're just going to turn on every other light, which I think that was when Monica said they should be dimmable, which I agree with. It's because we want the overall to be 50% reduced as opposed to just every other. So
They have to be, here was my understanding, and I may be wrong, but D3, that the 50%, like I said, if you have 10 lights on the site, and it all depends on whether you have necessary security lighting, you can have no more than 50% of that total lights can be on. So if there's 10 of them, you can have no more than 5 lights on. That doesn't have anything to do with dimmability. What I thought Monica was looking for when we were talking about new lighting be of dimmable nature is if we have something in the future where we require lights to be dimmable, at that point, then we can go ahead and amend this lighting to have to do with dimmability. But to have two different, a certain group can have dimmable lights while the other group has to turn 50% off, to be honest, I think that's going to be a nightmare to enforce. Maybe I'm understanding it wrong.
Well, I think the problem is nobody really knows what 50% of total site lighting means, as that expression's used there.
That's what I was trying to get at. So if total site lighting means the total number of lights, that's one thing. But what Brent was saying is
the output.
it's different than saying, here's the total amount of light that can be put out by all your systems. And you want 50% less than that.
So no more than 50% of
Total number of site lights.
No.
No.
Then they'll turn lights off.
You want dimmability, but we can't have existing lights to be dimmable.
Well, no, we can't. But most of this is nobody's going to pay any attention until they come in to do something, right? They're not even going to know this law exists. Pretty much, it's going to. It's the McGuire setup.
No more than 50% of the capacity of total site lighting can remain on overnight.
I mean, some of the I have some actually.
Yes.
I should.
Is that you agree, Tony?
That's what I would think. Because then that would cover both dimmability and non-dimmability.
What did you say exactly?
No more than 50% of total site lighting capacity can remain on overnight.
So
then couldn't the property owner then choose to just turn off 5 lights out of 10 rather?
But here's what you do. If you go back to J, and it should be, Mike, Scott, not considerations, should be given to the needs of public safety. Then you bring them back to public safety and say, look, I don't want an elderly woman or a young girl getting out of a car at 10 o'clock at night into a dark parking lot. And that's why you can blend it all. Now you have the language to do that.
Yeah, there is some language in some of these, back to when Brent was talking about the subdivision too, is like, you take the whole site and say, how much can you have on at any one time, sort of thing. Yeah, it's, that's why I was wondering if you come up with some sort of generic thing about, for the street lighting stuff, but does this take care of the street lighting issue?
Brent has a question.
I don't think it does. Unfortunately, street lighting, as I said, is paid for currently. There's no provision in public service law that unless a subdivision is going to install a metered location, a disconnect metered location, most street lighting is paid for by something known as a tariff, where you pay for a predicted amount of energy consumption according to that light fixture. So I think that street lighting does need to know whether or not it's, how it's going to be controlled. And then, I know I'm adding all kinds of confusion here, but when you talk about fixtures on private property being dimmable, that's only the first step in the process. You then also have to comment on the fact that the property owner has to have the ability to control those dimmable lights with the appropriate software. And maybe you don't have to get into that painful of detail, but just comment that not only does the fixture need to be dimmable, but the property owner needs to have the capacity to be able to dim them.
Oh, control it. I see.
Would we be assisted here if we gave some examples? To guide somebody who's reading this regulation. If you have somebody, like, just give them 4 or 5 examples and they can understand where we're going with this.
Yeah, I suppose. Does anybody, Brent, the lighting, Village of Cayuga Heights has a lighting plan. I think I even looked at it at one point. Does it address this?
Probably not, because the lighting plan was created
Long ago.
before the new LED lightings went into place. The village just replaced all of the existing street lighting inventory. They had to buy out the inventory from NYSEG so that then they could be converted to LED and paid for through a different kind of a tariff mechanism, which it's a long story, but that was all done after the law that you see was created. So I don't think that there's any language. If you're thinking maybe there's some language to draw upon, I don't think it's there.
I'm wondering, I worked on this some time ago, and it's already outdated, but at the time, Tony, when you and John and Randy were working on this, did you go back to the engineering, the Illuminating Engineering Society at all? Do you know? They came out.
I don't recall, but I know that you sent some documents that we used as a starting point.
But they're old. I'm wondering if they've updated some of their stuff, and maybe there'd be something there. It was done in 2011. It was the model lighting ordinance. Maybe we could look at that a little bit and see if there's anything we could sort of take from there that would start us off in the right direction, about just to kind of get some generic wording in here. Because
you mean wait, time out. You mean start over again, or you?
No. Just regarding
just talking about the issue of 50%.
Yeah, and street lights maybe.
Okay, so I don't know about street lighting. I take Brent's word for that. As far as the 50%, the idea of having simple examples is always a good idea for regulations. Yep. Because by definition, regulations A, want to be avoided, B, try to get squirmed out of, and C, are always totally confusing the first time they're used.
Right.
Regardless of whether they have to do with lighting or oil and gas. So if you want the Lighting Commission to give a couple of simple examples of what we mean by item, whatever it was, you took it off the screen.
Yes. The answer is yes.
For example, if your lighting system is not dimmable, 50% reduction in total capacity means you turn off 1/2 of your lights. If your system is dimmable, 50% reduction in capacity means you reduce the total light output of your system by 50%.
Right. I think that's great. I was actually more zeroing in on the street lighting thing, if we could find some, because that's something we haven't addressed at all. But I think
do that within the framework of this proposed new regulation, or is that totally outside the framework of what we're trying to do here? I don't know.
I think you would avoid fights. I don't think a court fight, but disputes if we just had examples. We can never give an example for every possible situation, but we can have general principles explained and, for example, as you point out. And it will take some time to develop it, but you'll be happy you have it because anybody reading the regulations will now come in prepared to understand what your position is.
On the topic of the street lighting, if it's just too much extra confusion, it doesn't hurt. There's no requirement for you to have that in there. I was just thinking if this was a document that the planning board was going to go back to for when the next subdivision comes in, it might have some guidance there, but I don't think it has to. If there's going to be street lighting as proposed as part of a subdivision, and that street lighting proposal that comes in from the developer goes before the lighting commission, then the lighting commission, John being on the lighting commission, will know what it is that he needs or wants for street lighting. So I only just, I apologize for bringing up this technical extra jargon, but it did seem like maybe.
Apology needed. It's important to be aware of it.
I would say, I don't think it would hurt to just say, street lighting, even if we just say something to the effect is to be determined by the lighting commission kind of thing language. It can't hurt to include something, can it? Or is it better just left silent?
Well, we already have that language in there.
You can't just defer totally to a subcommittee. You have to give them guidance.
Okay, so.
And with what's written in, if they can give 4 or 5 examples
With new lighting commission.
as an appendix to this, we'll cover it. Then there's enough information there for a reasonable person to read and understand this.
Yeah, I think examples, I agree with Tony and Bill. I think examples would be really helpful.
Okay,
It's fine.
so other than that,
So Mike, we'll reconvene the lighting commission with that homework assignment.
Yeah, I think we should probably get together for that one.
Yep.
5 a.m. tomorrow, Mike.
okay, so Mike, you wanted to talk with us about possible joint meeting with the
Yes.
Board of Trustees regarding cannabis legislation, I think.
Yeah, as some of you have read, and Carolyn has sent out some information she got from Planning Federation. The village has to decide whether they need to opt out of retail dispensaries and or on-site consumption areas. The village has to be able to pass a law if they do want to opt out of it. Otherwise, they automatically allow both areas within village zoning. Now, you may opt out of it now and are able to opt back in the future if you'd like, but it doesn't happen the other way around. So my thought, getting together with Jody, is next week, the trustees have a meeting on the 18th, Monday, the 18th. Instead of having the planning board discuss what they would like with this and then having the trustees discuss it, it'd be nice if we got together and had a joint meeting and kind of figured out what direction the village wants to go with this. This will allow, if we come out of there with some type of conclusion, this will allow Bill and I to come up with some wording for a proposed local law that would address the situation, whether we opt out or whether we have it allowed in certain zoning districts or whatnot, however you want to do it. So, but I think it would be save on time if we get everyone together.
I have a question. Well, I'm gonna have a couple questions. What are the, because this isn't something I'm following. So what are under this cannabis law, what are the allowable methods of consumption besides eating?
I will try to have as much information for you, Jim, as possible at that meeting so we can go all over it.
Because where I'm going with this is if the village doesn't opt out, would the cannabis law in any way prevent, for example, the complex I'm in, which I like, does not allow smoking, of any tobacco or other products in the apartments, which is great. And I would hate to see that change.
I don't know as it has anything to do with personal consumption. And I do believe that if you do have an on-site consumption area, that it can't be anything different than it would be of a normal smoking area, whether it be cigars, cigarettes, or whatnot. The way I have been looking at this is it's going to be similar to alcohol. Anything you have establishment to sell alcohol. Do we allow that in certain districts? The same way you would have these retail dispensaries. Yeah, there's a lot of questions. I agree. And I will try to have as much information as I possibly can for them.
Mike, I can get some brochures put out by the Association of Towns and the Association of Mayors and give it to you to distribute.
Yep, I've got some literature here that I said Carolyn was kind enough to send over from the Planning Federation. I'll send everything out to you. There's quite a little bit of reading, but it actually does explain how it does affect a village. Also, how taxes are distributed, that type of deal. It's very it's beneficial to look it over.
Now, I think you said, Mike, that the village needs to make a decision by the end of the year.
Yes, we have.
Otherwise, we are considered to be opted in. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're right now you're opted in. The only way you can get opted out is you
We
pass a
decide
local
to-
law saying we opt out.
Okay. And as he pointed out, we can then later opt in if we should so choose.
Correct, but you cannot
Okay.
reverse it and come back.
Right. Okay. So Ronnie,
I have if we pass a law, it is subject to a permissive referendum.
Either way.
And I created a decision tree type workflow just because I was going through the processes of what we would need to do. And I can forward that to you too. So if you decide to opt out, what steps would happen next and approximately when. So I will include that too. That summarizes all of the textual information about the steps of opting out or opting in.
okay, great. That would be helpful.
One of the
So-
things you'll find in the paperwork I'm going to send around is they look at New York, how much you're allowed to have in the home, and other jurisdictions. Some New Jersey's like 2 ounces, New York's 5 pounds. So the roads are bad during winter.
So let me ask everyone, who is available for a joint meeting next? Is anyone not available for a joint meeting next week?
Mike, I thought that Carolyn had asked that we not discuss it at that one because she was not going to be at the meeting. Could we confirm with her? She wanted to be at the meeting, and I thought that she said that she could not come on the 18th.
I had not heard that, Ronnie. I mean, that's possible, but if we don't, my concern is the end of November and you get in the end of December, we tend to lose.
Oh, Ronnie, could you mute for a minute? We're getting a lot of feedback.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
We're
there was
very
some-
jealous. We're very jealous, Ron.
Yes, thank you.
We tend to lose dates the end of November and end of December, so my initial reaction was to do it as soon as possible. I mean, if the 18th doesn't work, I mean, we're gonna end up cutting it close if we do have to have
Well, We
public.
can do a special meeting. You bring both boards in for a special meeting sometime after the 18th.
Yeah, that might be better.
And the public hearings can be held after the law is passed too, because it's not enacted until after 45 days. So we only have to pass the law through the village by December 31st. You don't have to have the whole permissive referendum cycle done before the 31st.
What I'm thinking
So-
about the public hearing is actually the actual public hearing for the local law.
Okay.
You have to establish that, and then you
Yeah.
have to have it, and then you vote. So I want to make sure we don't run out of meetings, that's all. That's what I was talking about.
So if
Okay.
Carolyn comes back 5 days later, just schedule a meeting then.
Right. I was just going to recommend that you check with Carolyn first before we do the whole cycle of can we meet in a joint meeting?
Well,
Is she-
okay, so let's check, first of all, before I forget though, is it if it turns out we can do it on the 18th, can everyone on the planning board attend, or is someone not able to attend? Everybody
I-
can attend, right?
I'm free, yeah.
Okay, how about if that doesn't work, we have a joint meeting, is this gonna be too long then on the 26th? At our meeting? We have a lot, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so then the next trustee meeting is on the 1st of November. If we don't, unless we have a special meeting
Right.
the week of the 25th through the 29th. Or even on the week, maybe if she just can't come on the 18th, is she available later in that week, I guess?
All right.
Just have to ask her.
I'll find out. I'll send something out tomorrow. I just kind of recommend you go, if you're not gonna do it the 18th, I recommend you have a special meeting.
Yep, I think you're right. I think it does get pretty tight because you have to post the public hearings. We have to do 2 of them.
Because whatever you
And-
decide, Bill and I have to come up with some type of proposed local law, and then the planning or the trustees would have to meet and set a public hearing for that proposal. So like I said, you've got a couple meetings in there that we're gonna burn up.
Well, I was gonna say, we always end up somehow in November, we usually lose 1 meeting around the Thanksgiving time sometimes. And then, of course, also with Christmas, it's often yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I don't know what kind of a turnout you get, but I'd assume you're gonna get a turnout, so have a special meeting, even a second special meeting to actually take the vote on this and hear what people have to say.
Right.
You're right, you
This,
might.
this will get away from you very quickly with the holidays coming if we don't get this.
Yeah, no,
End of the bill.
I think Mike's right. It will. Suddenly we're looking at, honestly, with the potential for what's been happening in the past where we ended up canceling a meeting in November and in December, we've only got 3 more meetings.
I just still understand I got to be October 11th, to be frank, this year.
I know. Okay, so Mike, you'll get back to us and let us know. And you'll figure out when we can have a special meeting, and then hopefully we can all attend. If not, as long as we have a quorum, will that suffice and we can fill everyone else in?
Yeah,
Okay,
if you're missing a couple people, they can always send in their opinions.
yeah,
But this will be a remote meeting anyways. If somebody's
Yeah.
out of town, they theoretically get, for a half hour, they can break away.
yes, it should be fine, but I'm just saying.
And don't forget that we'll have a video recording of the meeting and they can watch.
After, yeah.
Right.
Which is really helpful. Okay, and so next meeting then, we don't know when that, well, we have our meeting on the 26th. And is everybody going to be available on the 26th? Yes, 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 and yes?
Yep.
Okay, Mike, we have not, so we have Mr. Getzman returning. We have Marissa coming to us.
Yep.
Anything else we should know about?
I'm waiting for the beers to, sounds like they're gonna be close this next time around. I mean, I don't understand what they're doing, but that's up to them. And
Okay,
that'll be a kind of a long conversation.
yes. So the beers are possible, but there are no other like small things that have come up that might crop up between now and then. Who knows?
Not at this point.
Okay. All right. Mike Baker,
Yes.
report to us on the trustee meeting.
So the big thing wasn't, it happened, first thing, Mike Scott finally took the last test he needed to, and he was permanently appointed to his position at the in the village. So Ronnie told him he had to work twice as hard or 8 times as hard or something like that.
So he's now our code officer?
He is, yeah, permanently. So congratulations, Mike.
Congratulations, Mike.
Thank you. Ronnie our mayor actually said I had to get here on time now.
Oh, there
Oh,
it is. See. So then kind of the one of other two big topic items, Eric was at the meeting, and really the big topic there was discussing the sidewalk. So his engineers and the village engineers had some discussions, and really what Eric had asked was if I guess what's the best way to put it? There was some discussion about moving the sidewalk to the other side of the right of way. So kind of not building it according to what the plans were, but potentially moving it to the other side of the right of way to avoid some infrastructure issues. And he wasn't asking permission to move it. He was asking kind of permission to keep it, as a option available on the table to discuss. The trustees, I don't think anyone was in favor of that. So they really said, nope, keep it where it is. Figure out how to build it according to how it was designed and planned. So that was kind of the big thing there. And then Ronnie did urge Eric to fund the escrow, which is yet to be funded, or at least as of the last meeting, and yet to be funded. So Ronnie did urge him to do that. There was some discussion about face mask guidance for village employees, whether they're Mike and in the main building there, or the DPW workers up in the kind of accessory building back there. So there was some discussion about that. There was no decision made on it, but they were going to discuss it at one of their, I think the kind of regular Thursday meeting they have. They wanted to run it past the employees to get their feedback on them. There was some discussion about doing some budget transfers and authorizations to order some new equipment for the village, which does include an AV system for the village hall there. So that would be good. And then there was just some general discussion about some information from Carolyn about from NICOM and the cannabis discussion that we had just a few minutes ago. Randy had brought up a point that he hasn't seen some notes from the planning board in a while, so they were going to investigate that. I do know that obviously there's somebody from the trustees at these meetings, so they should be taking those notes back. But town elections obviously are November 2nd. So again, remember. And I know that I have one of the signs in my front yard. If you live in the village, you can vote in the town elections. So make sure that you go and vote on November 2nd. And then Simon, I don't know if anyone followed the news or not, but there was a big chunk of land that NYSEG was going to auction off, and there was quite a bit of pushback on that. NYSEG did cancel the election. I don't know if anyone wants to read into that too far, that it's a good thing or bad thing, but they at least canceled the auction. So we'll see what kind of happens after that. But those were kind of the big items discussed there at the trustee meeting.
Where, a question, where is the land that NYSEG was thinking about auctioning?
In the town.
Yeah.
Side of Cayuga Lake, just north of Milliken.
What?
Yeah.
What? Oh, Milliken Station?
East side of Cayuga Lake, north of Milliken.
Okay.
It's one of the few, yes, and it was one, yeah, it's just shoreline. It's shoreline property. Well, amongst other things, but yeah, quite a bit of frontage on the lake.
2,000 feet.
Yep. So we'll see where that goes. The governor supposedly made some sort of, I don't know, it wasn't definitive yet, but
yeah,
at least, as he said, we'll see where it goes. Okay, anybody else have anything? I wanted to, for those of you who can see everyone, Susan Ainsley joined us this evening. She has been, is interested in learning more about the planning board. So I invited her to join us on our Zoom meetings for a while to see what she thinks. So you see, this is the cast of characters in front of you, essentially. Mike is obviously our code officer. Bill, you probably picked up, is our legal counsel. Monica, Tony, Jim, Mike, and I are planning board members, and Brent Cross is our village engineer. And Ronnie Hardaway, I believe you know Ronnie, he's our mayor. And Simon Mull is a trustee, although you can't see him.
And if you're curious if there's a relation between Monica and Simon, there absolutely is. It's not just a random last name.
No. Well, they're not relatives exactly.
Sure
though.
they are. They're related.
No, somebody said that
Yeah.
once. I said, well, is he a relative? I said, no, he's my husband. They asked if,
Related.
well, I guess you are. You're
You're
related.
legally obligated to love each other.
I guess. At any rate, welcome, Susan. I hope we didn't
Thank
deter,
you.
there he is, deter you. So just Mike will be sending you the Zoom links when there's a new meeting, and hopefully you can join us, including a special meeting if it should work out for you.
Thank you.
So, and I was actually disappointed that Marissa didn't come tonight because Susan does live in the East Point complex. So you might be able to give us some opinion when you hear that next time, if you're able to join. Thanks so much for coming. If nobody has anything else, I would entertain a motion.
Oh, Tony has something.
Lisa, I just want, this is for you and everybody else. Carolyn and Lisa have been drafting a document related to residential and commercial solar in the village. And I'm behind on editing. Lisa, I just want to let you know, I'll get to it.
Okay, well.
And
yeah.
so, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead first.
So I had a question, and this is for you, Bill. He's going to look up now. Wait, question for me. Are the trustees or the planning board, somehow is the village able to pass a moratorium on, and I'm going to use solar as an example here. If, so we've been discussing solar and what we want to do to, for various things here for solar in the village. While we're having that discussion, is the village somehow able to pass a moratorium on certain kinds of solar, whether it's putting solar on your house or freestanding solar or solar farms? Is the village somehow able to pass a moratorium pending the current discussions that we're having or not? You're muted, by the way.
My initial reaction is probably no. Telling people you can't put solar in.
Well, I don't know. I was
At
thinking
least-
whether it's commercial versus residential. I don't know. I was just curious if there's anything that we can do for that. Well, since we are discussing it, and I know there's quite a bit of interest in it. I mean, I'm interested in it. Just curious.
I can look at it, but my guess is these types of laws and actions have always been limited by the state.
Yeah.
And I don't think they gave up the reins, but I'll take a look at it for you.
I think, Mike, I've been thinking about this because I was saying that we're working on this. I think, the kind of the way we're thinking about it is that rooftop for residential won't even probably require a special permit. There's just, some state stuff and people just come in and Mike gives them a building permit or whatever if they comply and off we go. It's the big stuff. It's the commercial freestanding ones that keep raising the issues. I think, the excessive, even the smaller freestanding ones, although they're not my favorite, I think we're still sort of okay because they're considered an accessory building. It's the large commercial arrays and I think the farms. But, I've been thinking about it, and depending on where one would come in and suggest they go, I don't believe it would meet our general conditions.
I don't disagree with any of those statements. I think like rooftop, fine, freestanding, residential, not my favorite. Maybe I would put one up here. Who knows? But I think as we venture more in towards the kind of commercial aspects of that, that's why I was asking. And I also think that, right, there's some other options that we have to maybe say no, or we're going to wait on that.
Because I think there's, we hear rumors and it's like, oh my gosh, are they going to put it in the, this whole parking lot's going to be taken over? Well, that's one thing. But, are they going to go into a residential area and maybe just because they have the money, scoop up a bunch of land? Well, that doesn't work with our general conditions.
Right.
If it's not, it changes the character. I think we sort of have some protections, because after our conversation about that, I thought, well, wait a minute. If this were going to go in next door to me, it's a residential area, and this we have our general conditions. I think we're okay, but until we get it, but it just points out how important it is that we keep moving with this ordinance.
Absolutely.
My impression has been, I'm not an expert on this, is the guys who come in and want to take over 100 acres aren't looking for some small little parcel here in the village.
Right.
So I don't know if it's a big threat that people should be concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any huge area here in the village, but I mean, there are some. I mean, if you look at the Anaya, is it Sundance?
Well, yeah.
I mean, that's a big tract of land. I don't think they want to sell it, but imagine, I think everyone knows where that is, off Tripham right before
Right.
Burdick. That is a big piece of land, and it is sloped appropriately, and it's
Something that size is not under the control of the village.
Right, anyway.
That
Right.
falls under, literally, it falls under the Secretary of State of the state of New York in a new program instituted this year called the Office of Renewable Energy Siting.
okay.
So what we're really concerned about here, you've already mentioned it, is what are people doing in the residential areas?
Mhm. Yeah.
And what are they gonna do? What commercial establishments, like, think of the roof of the mall.
Oh, yeah,
That would be a great place for solar.
absolutely.
Yes, it would.
It really would be.
So-
Well, and until we inspect the roof, let's not
Well,
get too optimistic.
It could be a great place for solar.
Mike
Okay,
or Jim,
one
go
thing-
ahead.
Yeah, I did a lot of driving around today to look at Eric and look at Millcroft and some other places, and I can't remember everywhere I went, but I do recall, and I was in the village, not seeing a couple of houses where they had one or two of those solar panels in their yard.
Mhm.
And I was kind of guessing that's, I think, what Mike's asking about. I'm
Yes,
not
that's-
sure that
that's-
if I
that's called
lived in a
ground-
neighborhood,
That's called ground
I would-
mount.
Yeah.
That's
what?
called ground mounting, and that would be subject to a special permit according to
Mhm.
what.
Yeah, because I don't think I'd want to be looking out my living room window and seeing one or two of those in the house next door across the street.
I think that this came up.
On a
in this-
roof, yeah, that's different.
Yeah, the roof, I mean, I like the roof
That's
one.
fine.
I think it would be something we should encourage, but I think this came up when we did the East Shore subdivision. And you go over and, oh my gosh, the neighbors were very upset because all of a sudden they put in this big solar panel array and hadn't even, I don't know, maybe, I guess they didn't get the notice for the special permit. I don't know how that went, but it was pretty obtrusive, and I'm on board with that too. Aesthetically, I find them very difficult, but it's hard to balance all these things out with, clean energy and aesthetics and stuff. So, but we're working on it. So, Tony, do the lighting commission first, I guess.
I had one more thing, just
What?
as an update for anyone who's interested. I did drive past the Millcroft Phase 2 Beers property today, and I will say that after, I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say months of inactivity, there was somebody there on a ladder putting up 1/4 of one more piece of the Quonset hut. So you can call that progress if you
There
want.
you go.
There you
Yeah,
go.
I know that that was one of the places I went by up, and I noticed that the Quonset hut seemed to have one or two more arches on it.
I'll
Everyone
say
said there's no progress. Look at this.
7 1/4 pieces down, 30 more to go, maybe.
I was going to say one a month, whether you need it or not, It's like, oh my gosh, 2 years later. Okay, if we got nothing else, I think we're deteriorating here.
We're just warming up.
Was that a motion, Tony, to adjourn?
Second.
Do I have a second? Mike Baker? So Tony to Mike Baker. All those in favor? Aye, at 8:51 PM.
Aye.
Aye, and aye.